Howdy pards, MrHolster here, just having a little green tea in the tack room. You can't beat that stuff. This is what I'm going to talk about today, a coffee in the tack room, which is actually green tea in the tack room. And it's not monetized, and you know why it's not monetized? Because this is not advertiser friendly, and it's, you know guys, it's not really hard to decide what's advertiser friendly. It may be for other people, but for me it's not. However, I keep getting demonetized. But pretty much, if you're an advertiser and it's the kind of subject you don't want to have your ads on, yeah, it's not advertiser friendly. And this is not, because we're going to talk about cancer. So, yeah, I don't think I'd want to advertise on this video. So, it's not monetized. So you shouldn't have saw an ad before this started. Yeah, who knows? At any rate, I'm going to talk about my experience, what's going on, and give you an update. I am, because I got a lot of things going on. I made a lot of decisions, some of them firearms, as in I'm weeding things down to 6 I'm keeping. I think it's 6. I have to really count, but basically my 45s and everything else is going to go. So how I do that, I don't know, but I'm going to do it as fast as I can. Because I need to. So that's a big update on what I'm doing a lot, and the area that my followers watch my channels to see about firearms. Yeah, there we go. Now we'll go on to the cancer, which is, yeah, obviously tied. I thought what I'd do is give you a little brief synopsis, and I'm going to give it brief because there's a lot of things cut out and removed, and I'm not going to go through it all because it's, yeah. I tried that just a few minutes ago, and the video ended up being 20 minutes of your life you would definitely want back again. So I'm going to give you the highlights and really try and snip it. Back a year ago, in the first week of September, I noticed a mole was bleeding on my back, and it just so happened to coincide with my physical that week, so I didn't worry about it. And the first thing I did when I got to my doctor is say, I've got a mole bleeding on my back. I don't know if I hit it on something like barbed wire or what's going on, because I can't see it because it's on my back. And he looked at it and said, well, if it was bleeding, it's not now, and it looks fine. Don't worry about it. You're all right. Gave me official okie dokie, patted me on the butt, and off I went. Somewhere around January, February time period, it had grown and was bleeding again. And you know, I kind of ignored it, frankly, because I figured, well, I'd already been through this. And it didn't go away. So come the end of February, March time period, I think it was more like end of March, I got an appointment at a dermatologist and went in there. And yeah, the rest is history. It was melanoma cancer. And as a result, we had several moles that were removed. There's basically a swath of my back that's about 8 inches wide to 18 inches long or 12 inches long. I'm not really sure. I tried to look at it one day and I decided it was better not to see it. And they just cut out the big, huge gun mat on my back, took the skin, pulled it back together, and stitched it up. But in the process of doing that, they inject you with a radioactive material right in the sites and around the edges of the sites, and they track it. And it tracked to 2 lymph nodes underneath this arm. So they remove the lymph nodes, and they do a biopsy. Well, they send them to a pathologist, and they examine them. And one of the lymph nodes had a melanoma tumor in it that was smaller than 1 centimeter, just a tiny little guy. And when they're that small, then they don't go back in and remove any other lymph nodes. They don't give you radiation, but they do treatment with an oncologist, and they sent me to an oncologist. I was over at the Coborn Cancer Center. That's the title here. And he said, well, we're going to do a PET scan on you, an MRI, and if everything comes back clean, then we're going to start you on a immunotherapy drug. And there's 2 we can use, because one, we've tested the cancer that was in you, and genetically it is susceptible to one of the drugs, which is an oral drug that we give you, that you take every day. And the other option is to go with Opdivo, which we infuse into your arm once every 2 weeks. and we're going to go with Opdivo because it works better. That's what he said. So that was the deal. It says, so he sent me off to get, he said, you get schedule these tests and come back in 2 weeks, and then we'll start you on the chemotherapy. So I went out, scheduled the tests, but we got hung up by the insurance company. They didn't approve the PET scan. So 2 weeks later, I went back, and he said, well, you haven't done the test yet. And I said, well, it's because the insurance company hadn't approved them. And he said, no, he said, quote unquote, you haven't done the test yet. What, you don't want any treatment? And I said, no, I want treatment. I just saw no reason to get the MRI scheduled and do that because they didn't approve the PET scan. I was waiting to see what to do. I figured the MRI is not going to do any good without a PET scan, so there's no sense in doing the MRI. And we had contacted, put pressure on the insurance company, and we were still working on it. And he said, well, I don't need to do a PET scan. I can do a CAT scan. It's the same thing. So he sent me off for a CAT scan and an MRI right then. And that afternoon, I was getting Opdivo pumped into me. Jump forward 6 months later, he said, well, you're due for another CAT scan and MRI. And I said, well, can we get a PET scan? Because they approved that PET scan. They just didn't do it for 2 weeks, till 2 weeks after you did the CAT scan. And I'd been reading up on it, and the PET scan does a better job. And he said, well, not really. It only works, only on the lymph nodes in the neck, really, it does a better job. Other than that, it's the same thing. I said, well, that's all right. I'd still like a PET scan since they'll do it. So he sent in a request for that early, and they approved it. And so beginning of October, I went in for my infusion and also a PET scan. So that morning I was scheduled for the PET scan, and then they were going to do the infusion. So they did the PET scan, and later that afternoon I went in for the infusion, and he was reviewing the PET scan, and he went, oh, wait a second. He okayed me for the Opdivo. He said, okay, your blood tests are perfect. We're going to do another infusion of Opdivo. This is your 7th month of Opdivo. You got a 12-month treatment. And he goes, oh, we did a PET scan. Let's see what the PET scan has. And he pulls it up, and he goes, is your knee bothering you? I said, no, my knee's fine. Your left knee, it hurts, right? And I said, no, it's fine. He goes, oh, okay. He says, well, you seem to have a tumor in your lymph node. And he checked under my arm, and it was the size of a golf ball. You could feel it. Which, to this day, I can't understand how nobody could have felt that before then, because I'd seen 3 doctors in the 30 days prior to then. I even saw a dermatologist who felt those lymph nodes 7 days prior to that. So, sent me off for a biopsy. I did a biopsy. There was melanoma cancer in that lymph node. Set me up with my original surgeon who did the original work, which I really like that guy. He's really good. He got me in the next day. He sent me to see him, and he scheduled me for the next morning. Even though he had 4 other surgeries that day, he squeezed me in, and they removed it. And he told me he went in there and just took all the material he felt necessary out and threw them in a bag and sent it to a pathologist. He said he has no idea how many lymph nodes he pulled out of there. He said he'd leave that for the pathologist to figure out and wait for the pathology report. Put a drain in it because of the amount of material, which is that bag of blood sitting on my chest on Facebook. And it's still there, by the way. He sent me on my way. So 2 days later, I get a call from the oncologist. I need to come in right away. I went in there, and he said we need to schedule you for a different therapy. We want to use these 2 pills that you take orally because your cancer is susceptible to them. And this is, originally he had talked about this, the 2 options of the 2 pills or Opdivo, and he went with Opdivo because he said it worked better and less invasive. And of course he's taken me off of Opdivo at this point because, yeah, as he said, quote unquote, obviously Opdivo's not doing anything for you. Doesn't work. He says, so he wants to, which of course, yeah, this upsets me because he's already told me that the Opdivo works better than the pills, and now he wants to put me on the pills. He says these pills are really expensive, and the insurance rarely covers it, or if they do, they only cover percentage. And then the patient covers the rest, and it's usually like a third or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. At this point, I'm tuning them out because if the insurance doesn't cover it, that's the end of the deal. And the pills cost $10,000 for the one and $5,000 the other for 30 days or 10 days or whatever he said. I wasn't listening at that point because I figured, well, if they don't cover 100%, that's the end of the deal, because I'm not mortgaging everything I have and leaving my wife to pay it off after I'm done. Because I'd already done enough research on all this stuff to know that, yeah, it works for like 15% of the people. And, you know, I get better odds at a racetrack than that. So, yeah, I'm not going to leave my wife broke just to take a crapshoot that these pills that really make you sick are going to make me live another extra 2 years. So that's my feelings on the whole thing. So there you go. He sends me off. He says, we got to do something about that cancer in your knee. And I said, what cancer in my knee? Well, we got to see what that is. And he sent me off to do a MRI of the knee so they could decide what to do with it. And I do know enough to know that they do an MRI before they do a biopsy, so they know where to stick the needle. So I don't know if that's what he's got in his mind or if he wasn't sure it's cancer. You know, they really don't tell you anything because it's just your life and your body. They don't need to disclose everything till the last possible minute. Like they've gotten all the money and you're dead. That's how I'm feeling at this moment. And then I get a call that I got to go into a radiologist for a consultation. He said that they might do radiology on my armpit and kill off the rest of the lymph nodes. And at that point I'm thinking, why don't you just yank them out when you're there? He says he's going to suggest they don't do that because he doesn't think there's any benefit to it, and I'll lose those lymph nodes and my arm will swell up the rest of my life. And, you know, and my theory is, well, what's the rest of my life? How long is it going to be swollen? Maybe it doesn't matter. At any rate, so I got to go in there, and now I'm thinking maybe the radiologist is because they want to give me radiation to my knee because it's not operable. I don't know. I don't even know if there's cancer in yet because they don't tell you anything. This is the way my mind works, and now it's been, you know, when you get an MRI done, they know the results right then. I mean, like within an hour, they know the results and have them in their computer. So now it's been, that was on Friday, so now it's been several days, and I've heard nothing, except for an appointment's been scheduled for the radiologist. But in his defense, he told me that they're going to send me there anyways on the armpit and let the radiologist decide. So my feeling is, you know, if you can make a buck, when's everybody turn away work? I don't know. Whether I'll need it or not, it'll probably get done, is my theory. Here's my real gripe about the whole process that I am going to talk about briefly before I'm done, just because this one annoyed me out of the whole process. When they first start doing chemotherapy, they make you meet with everybody, a nurse that's going to tell you what to look for and when to call them, a person that mixes up the drugs, which would be the pharmacist, which basically goes over all the same thing, what's going to kill you, what to look for, and when to call them. And the last one is the dietitian. Well, the dietitian didn't come in the little room for all the meetings. She was doing something else, so they said they'd send her in when I was getting my chemo because it takes an hour. I'm in there getting the bag of Zima pumped into my arm, which at this point, I joked about that all the way through. All it was a bag of Zima, a reference of Archer there, if you don't know. And now I'm thinking that was what it was, but I really didn't get any buzz off of it, so I don't think so. But at any rate, because it did no good. He took me off of it because it did no good. Which was fine because the insurance company already notified me that when my policy comes up for renewal in January, I need to give them another 10 grand. And by the way, the 10 grand deductible for just to get another scan, probably. Whatever I might be doing at that point, because Lord knows they won't cover the other medication because they notified me they weren't going to cover my chemo anymore. They can't kick me off the policy, but they can change the policy so it doesn't cover Opdivo. But, you know, it doesn't make any difference at this point. But I could have gotten 2 more treatments if he wouldn't have yanked me off of it. So, yeah, the whole thing's a lost cause. I think the only chance in hell I have of surviving this is by the grace of God performing a miracle and by the food I eat. Which brings me to my last real complaint about the Coborn Cancer Center. Because the dietitian that's working there is doing nothing more than committing a criminal act, taking money under false pretenses. So she came in while I was getting my bag of Zima and said, quote unquote, well, you're old enough, you know how to eat, you don't need me to tell you what you need to do. Well, let me tell you, I think one of the reasons I got this, other than the fact that my dad was in the Navy and we were out on that boat all the time without our shirts on. But yeah, it's probably a real contributing factor. But I think the other is my incredibly poor diet. Because to me, an evening meal was a ribeye steak and a glass of rye whiskey. And I've since learned that all that stuff my mother made me eat that I hated growing up, yeah, that's the stuff that kept her from dying of cancer. And it really is all about diet. And it's very specific on, it's not just eating your vegetables. There's specific vegetables. Specific foods you need to eat to make yourself invincible against cancer. And for the dietitian to not be singing that song and teaching people where their money needs to go for food to get their best shot at beating cancer, I find absolutely criminal. So if anybody from the Coborn Cancer Center is listening, yeah, your whole program when it comes to the foods people eat is criminal. You people are living in the 50s. Because seriously, all you have to do is get on the internet and spend 10 minutes, and there's a huge amount of information, even from the Mayo Clinic, about your diet. Yeah, maybe they don't have scientific proof that eating correctly kills cancer. There's a lot of evidence and a lot of studies to suggest that it can keep you from getting cancer, and it may indeed aid in your fight against cancer. So to send in a dietitian to say what she said, because maybe if I knew how to eat correctly, I wouldn't have been there to start with. Maybe. Well, there you go. I tried it again. I got you down to 17 minutes and 7 seconds of your life. You'll never get back again. That's as best as I could do this morning. There's an update for you on the plight of MrHolster, who's gonna live as long as he can, enjoy everything he can, and give the best fight he can. But yeah, I can't rationalize selling everything I own and giving it to the Coborn Cancer Center on some treatment that doesn't work as well as the Opdivo, which only has a 15% success rate, says I. Yeah. They would have done the money that my insurance company paid for the dietitian could have been money well spent if she would have done her job. Because I think that's the only thing that has gotten me to where I am today, is my change in my diet the day I found out I had cancer versus sitting on my ass and eating the same foods I had. So, yeah, that pumped it up to 18 minutes and 20 seconds of your life. You'll never get back. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, for MrHolster and Jack, go out and stay safe. And hopefully you won't have to hear about this again for a while. I understand that I'm dragging my channel into the toilet by talking about this stuff. Because nobody wants to hear about it. Well, there you go.